Good morning, everyone. It's still morning. Thank you for taking part in today's session. So like Dr. Sum said, it's Journey, the joint and open unapologetic reflection to nourish and energize yourself. So some session objectives for today. Can everyone see my screen, by the way? Yeah, okay, thank you. So some session objectives today. By the end of today's session, we hope that you'll be able to recognize the importance of self-care, explain the You First framework and how it can be used for yourself, apply pieces to your personal situation, and identify 1 to 2 strategies to improve your personal well-being. So this session will rely on you to be looking inward and reflecting on where you are and what you envision for yourself. So the worksheet that was provided is there to be able to help you note it down. If you aren't able to print or type in the worksheet, then we ask that you have a blank piece of paper and a pen with you. So to begin with, we'll start with a quick poll question and you can respond in the chat. I will do my best to pull that up. So who are you currently supporting? I read some of the comments in the chat that were earlier and I saw some answers like supporting parents, supporting an aunt, a spouse, and some friends. So if you'd like to add to that, you feel free to. All right, parent. That's great. And this just kind of helps us get an idea of who's in the room. All right, so we're going to start with a quick little activity. I'd like everyone to take 1 minute and write down a list of all the people that you support in your life. All right, and if you're done, you can just give me a thumbs up or a nod or. All right, amazing. So how many of you included yourself in that list? And if you didn't include yourself, where do you put yourself on that list? Are you at the top? Are you in the middle? Or are you at the bottom? So when it comes to self-care, caregivers find it difficult to engage in self-care. And we might think that it's selfish and we might feel guilty for engaging in self-care because there's just so much to do. However, it's important to engage in self-care because not doing so can put you at risk of burnout and compassion fatigue. So just like the airline tells you to put on your oxygen mask before you help someone else, if we don't take care of ourselves, we won't be able to give the best of ourselves. So my hope is that by the end of the session, you'll shift towards putting yourself at the top of that list. So for those of you who might be, I think I missed something. Here's the question. All right, so are you familiar with the You First framework? And you can type yes or no or not sure in the chat. Okay, so we have some people saying yes. That's okay, I was gonna go over it anyways. So for those of you who might be unfamiliar with You First, it's an acronym and framework originally designed to support people with dementia who have responsive behaviors. Even though it was designed for healthcare providers and caregivers, You First and pieces can actually be applied to everyone. And that's because we all have responsive behaviors. And this framework can also be applied to any person because the basis is all about understanding. So it's really important to have self-awareness and discover what your own triggers are and what we can do. And we can do that by applying You First to ourselves. So You First is a way to understand the person, so in this case yourself, and a way to identify changes in ourselves, our needs, our supports, and responses. It's also a way of sharing what works. So for today, we'll be using this framework as a guide to think about our own well-being and identify opportunities where we can create positive change. So I'd like for you to take a moment and think about yourself in the last 7 days. So we're going to go through a series of questions for you to consider. So I'd like you to think about them in the context of the last week. So I'd like for you to spend 2 minutes to think about and write down your answers to these 2 questions. So first, in your personal life, what concerns you right now? And in your professional, working life, or role as a caregiver, what concerns you right now? And we've purposefully built in time within the presentation for everyone to answer these questions as we go through the content so that you can apply what you're learning right away. As well, when you're writing these things down, try and be specific about what's concerning you. And by identifying these things, we can have more clarity on what the root causes of our concerns, and then hopefully gain some insight on some steps we can take to address them. All right, so I'll give everyone another 20 seconds. If you're done early, you can also give a thumbs up or any emoji that you'd like. All right. So hopefully that got everyone thinking. Because of time, we'll focus on the U in you first, which stands for understanding. And when we look at understanding, we want to look at understanding the whole person. So in this case, yourself, in a holistic way, and by examining our various pieces, which stand for physical, intellectual, emotional, capabilities, environment, and social. And all of these sections are interconnected and can play a part in our overall well-being. So we'll go through each section, starting with physical. So when we think of our physical well-being, here are some things to consider. Are your basic physical needs being met? When we apply this to people with dementia, we might ask ourselves, is this person yelling because they need to use the washroom or because they're thirsty? And we can apply this to ourselves too. So for example, when I'm hungry, I'm less patient, more agitated, and I will get a little bit sensitive. Another thing to think about is, how are you sleeping these days? Do you have insomnia, trouble sleeping, or waking up throughout the night? And how does that impact your day? So I know when I don't get enough sleep, I might wake up with a headache and feel tired all day. As well, consider how's your eating. Do you stress eat like me? Or engage in unhealthy eating patterns? Do you skip meals, or do you eat on the go because you have no time and you're rushing from one thing to the next? Are your sexual and intimacy needs being met? And sometimes we shy away from talking about sex, but really it is a physical need. And research has shown that not having our sexual and intimacy needs met can help lower our stress when we're in happy and satisfying relationships. Sex and intimacy in many ways is also related to our emotional needs, which we'll get into. Many of us, because of the pandemic, weren't able to hug or touch our loved ones. And most humans naturally crave that physical and emotional closeness. So here are some other physical factors to consider. What diseases or conditions do you live with, and how does it affect your day-to-day? Do you take medications? What do they help with? And are there any side effects that come with taking medications? Also consider, do you use drugs? Are you drinking more and smoking more because of stress? And are you engaging in unhealthy coping mechanisms that might be negatively impacting your physical health? So drinking a lot of water, that's great. All right, so some other things to consider. Do you experience physical discomfort or pain? And where is it? How much is it? And is the discomfort sharp or dull? Are you ignoring it and not seeking proper treatment for it? Have you had any sensory losses? So that could be your hearing, your vision, your smell, taste, touch, or even mobility. Have you been delaying making medical appointments due to the pandemic or just the busyness of life? So the physical is all about listening to your body. So I'd like for us to take 2 minutes to jot down some notes about the current state of your physical health. You don't have to share. Again, this is about you reflecting and just being honest with yourself. So we'll start now. I'll give everyone 2 minutes, and if you happen to finish earlier, you can just give me a thumbs up. That just reminded me to keep drinking water. Amazing. All right, so I'll give everyone another 30 seconds. All right, so the next letter of pieces is I for intellectual. And this letter looks at how we're thinking and processing information. And everyone's way of processing information is different, but it's important to notice our own cognition. So also consider if there's been any recent changes. So does anyone relate to this picture on the slide? I feel like I relate to it very well. So ask yourself these questions. How has your memory been for the past week? How well are you able to focus on your tasks and responsibilities at home and at work? Do you have trouble following or focusing when you're having conversations with others? And another thing to consider is how well are you able to organize your thoughts and plan ahead? So have you noticed any changes in these areas recently? So again, I'm going to give everyone 2 minutes. It might be helpful to jot down some examples so that you can refer back to them later. To-do lists are very helpful. Thanks, Anna. definitely. I'm also one of those people that uses a lot of Post-its and putting them everywhere. All right, so I'll give everyone another minute. Whiteboards. That's a really good tip and also reusable. So that's helpful too. All right, so we'll move on to the next section. So the next letter is E for emotional. So what losses are you coping with? And also think about what adjustments you've had to make, both in your personal and professional life. And how are you coping with these new changes? As well, are there any traumas that you've experienced in the past that are now being triggered because of other things going on in your life? Or have you experienced a recent trauma? So ask yourself, what makes you fearful or anxious? So something that makes me anxious is if something happens to my loved ones while I'm away, and being aware of our feelings and acknowledging them instead of ignoring them is important. Also think about, are you feeling lonely or isolated? Are you feeling depressed? We'll talk about some strategies later, but I really want to highlight that mental health is just as important as physical health. And if you had a broken leg, you wouldn't hesitate to go see a doctor. But sometimes, because of the stigma attached to mental illness, we're reluctant to seek medical help. And if you think you are experiencing signs of depression and are constantly having negative thought patterns that lead to a chronic state of low mood, please go see your doctor or speak to a counselor, a social worker, or a professional. And lastly, ask yourself if your spiritual needs are being met. Spiritual needs may be tied to religion, but they don't necessarily have to be. So for example, if you have a spiritual connection to nature, ask yourself, when was the last time you went outside to experience nature? So we'll take 2 minutes to reflect on our emotional state. And if you're identifying any other emotions that aren't on this list, then please feel free to note them down as well. That's very true, Dr. Sung. I think something we all lost during the pandemic is the idea of normal. That's very true. And how different everyone's normals are. All right, so another 30 seconds. Absolutely, Teresa. I feel like it's been such a change in so many ways. And sometimes you're overwhelmed and can't think, well, what's really causing this? And it could be multiple things. All right, so our next letter is C for capabilities. So things to consider here are you feeling overwhelmed with tasks? Have you stretched to your capabilities to your limits? How and when do you say no? Or on the other hand, are you feeling underwhelmed and understimulated, either at work or at home? We all want to feel useful and live with a sense of purpose. So where do you experience challenges, both personal and professional? And what do you do to compensate for those challenges? So think about, what are your strengths and weaknesses? How do you maximize or make use of your strengths? And what are you good at? How do you cope with your weaknesses or try to work around them? Also, when do you function best? Are you an early bird who likes to wake up really early in the morning when you're most energized and get things done? Or are you a night owl like myself who likes to stay up late and is most productive later on in the day or in the evenings? Knowing this about yourself is important too. And also think about where you function best. We'll talk about environment in the next section, but sometimes our performance and how we function is really impacted by our surroundings. So we'll take 2 minutes to reflect on the capabilities section of pieces. All right, so another 30 seconds or so. All right, so the second E in pieces stands for environment. So what does a supportive environment look like to you? At home and at work, or if you're working from home? The answer may vary from person to person. So for some of us, we might like a quiet place, and others might like music in the background. So does your current home and work environment meet those needs? Do you have enough privacy or time for yourself? For example, if you're working from home, do you have a private space for work that's separate from the rest of your family? Or is there a space for you to go if you need to take a step away for some deep breaths, if you're not working and need a quick break? So does your environment feel safe, familiar, and comfortable? Safe could be referring to the pandemic or just safety in general. And is your environment familiar to you, or have you had to make changes? Is the environment physically comfortable? And do you have the right equipment and furniture? Also think about noise levels. And does your Does your environment have enough lighting? And are there windows that allow for natural light? Also, does your environment feel cluttered or messy or disorganized? And how does that impact your emotional well-being? For me, seeing a pile of dirty dishes in the sink like this, or dirty clothes on the ground, might trigger a negative emotional reaction. And what about the temperature of the environment? The weather can also impact our mood, and some people actually have seasonal affective disorder, where you have depressive symptoms at certain times of the year, especially during the winter months. Have you noticed feeling more tired and more moody during that specific season? So we'll take 2 minutes to reflect on our environment. So Julie said that the picture of the person working at their dinner table with kids at all ends, so it resonates with my current working life. Does anyone else resonate with that photo? That's a good idea, Dr. Sun. I actually ended up buying a whole bunch of flowers. I have a window, but it's right next to a wall, so there's not much to look at. Oh, wow, I can imagine. Especially during the like peak pandemic when everyone was kind of juggling with school as well. I can imagine that was really tough. I'm glad you're back in your office. All right, so we'll move on to the next section. So the last letter in pieces is S for social, which includes your life experiences, your personality, values, and what you enjoy. So how would you describe your personality? There are a bunch of personality tests that you can take online that can help you get a better understanding of yourself. So understanding your personality might also help you identify what your strengths and weaknesses are and help you figure out why you're more compatible with certain people rather than others. You can also consider, how do you approach difficult situations and conversations? And do you have a need for control? So under social, also consider who the important people and pets are in your life that bring you joy. And are you creating opportunities to maintain that connection and relationship? Do you feel part of a community, and are you engaged in social activities? And what do you value and what gives meaning to your life? So this is going to be different for everyone and very personal. You can also think about, what are your proudest moments? Do you have any milestones and achievements? Another area of well-being is the need for growth and self-development. And maybe that's part of why you're participating in today's workshop, because you want to learn and grow. Do you have opportunities to celebrate holidays and practice rituals and traditions and eat cultural food? If this is something that's important to you, that might be something you want to consider. What are your hobbies? Think about any of the things that you'd like to try but haven't yet. And what's your favorite music? Music can also have a huge impact on our mood. And sometimes listening to a favorite song can bring back past happy memories, or make you just want to sing and dance and help you feel more relaxed. So 2 minutes to reflect on the social aspect of pieces. So I'll give everyone another minute. All right, so thank you so much for participating in these reflections. Now we're going to move on to self-care planning. So here are a few tips when creating your self-care plan. So be creative and make a visual reminder. You can draw something or print a picture and put it up somewhere. Share your plan with someone, like a friend, family member, or coworker, as they can help monitor your progress and goals. This also relates to having an accountability partner. Sometimes it's easier to keep promises that we make to others than promises we make to ourselves. Also, make it fun. The last thing we want is for this activity to add more stress to your life. So make it fun and see if you can involve your friends and family. Give yourself an incentive or reward once you've achieved a long-term goal. So for example, maybe one of your goals is you want to adopt a specific exercise routine. If you're able to achieve that goal, say within a month, maybe your reward is that you get to buy new workout clothes that you've been eyeing. You need to honor that reward to yourself because that'll support you in being able to make another positive change in your life. Also, account for things that might come up that'll create challenges when following through with your plans. Some ways to overcome them would be to remind yourself of the why. Why is it so important to you to do this? Reach out to your accountability partner or support person when you need some encouragement and try to do some aspect of it. A little is still one step forward in the direction that you want to go. So acknowledge a step back and reset and consider where you can make some adjustments to get back on track, or make some adjustments if you anticipate that something will affect your ability to engage in these steps. So self-care, what is it? Self-care is any activity that we do deliberately in order to take care of our mental, emotional, and physical health. Self-care isn't a selfish act or forcing yourself to do something you don't enjoy. So when we say deliberately, we mean that self-care is not just a passive act or behavior. It's a consciously planned out set of activities that you create for your own well-being. And it takes effort and time to organize. So please share in the chat, why do you think self-care is necessary? Also includes a spiritual component for me. That's great. Thanks, Rebecca. Self-care is necessary as it helps us to help others. Self-care is important because it allows you to renew and recharge. It's also a way to model healthy behaviors for our loved ones. Amazing. Thank you so much. All right. So here's a list of some examples of self-care activities. So that could be calling a friend, doing absolutely nothing, exercising, and even talking to your doctor. All right, so we've talked about self-care and we've talked about pieces. Now, I'd like to ask you to look at your pieces notes and select one or two things from each of the pieces that you would like to focus on. So there might be multiple areas that you'd like to see change, but it can be unsustainable to change everything at once. So I'd like for you to focus on 1 to 2 things that are the most important to you right now. And here are some questions to ask yourself. What outcome or result would you like to see? And why is it so important for you to address this aspect of your well-being? And why now? You may need to break down your goal into smaller steps. So for example, if you've never exercised before, maybe you don't want to start by saying you want to exercise every day for an hour. Maybe you want to start with small steps and eventually work towards your goal. So what needs to happen to make that result possible? Maybe you need to buy comfortable running shoes or set out a specific time to go running. Also, who can help you with this and what will they do? So maybe you need to find a walking buddy to go on those walks with. Depending on the goal you have in mind, your support people can be different people, and it doesn't have to be the same people for all your goals. So many of you may already be familiar with SMART goals, but it's one way to increase your likelihood of accomplishing your goal. So you want to make sure that your goal is specific. What do you want to do? One of my personal goals is I want to cook more, but specifically, I want to take a 30-minute walk after dinner each night with my family. This goal actually fulfills multiple areas of my pieces. Not only is it a physical goal, but it also helps with building emotional and social connections with my family and allows me to enjoy the environment and nature in my neighborhood. The goal should also be measurable. So for example, how many times a week and for how long will you walk? Think about if the goal is achievable, is it realistic? And when exactly do you want to accomplish it? It could be a long-term goal. So we'll spend about 4 minutes to pick 1 or 2 goals and fill out this part of the worksheet. And if you feel comfortable sharing, please let us know in the chat one thing that you're going to start doing to address your pieces. So Teresa says, sounds like in my case, I may need to hire help, perhaps a PSW. And it's great that you're recognizing that because a lot of people might try and stretch themselves too thin to try and be a caregiver and also manage everything else that they're dealing with. So that's great. That is true. So Ontario has a covered program, but they only assist a few hours a week, and it's not enough to give you a whole day off. And there is one of those challenges. So Rebecca shared, to regulate my emotions, as I often feel overwhelmed by caregiving duties, I intend to commit to a daily meditation practice. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And in response to not enough PSW hours, I'm guessing, Julie mentioned that it could be helpful to think of who the other supports that you could leverage around you. And it takes courage to ask. That's very true. And I think maybe if you need, having some kind of family meeting where you're connecting and figuring out who fits where and how much time you can spend. All right, so here's an example of a self-care plan. So what was a boring chart is now a more visually attractive poster with colors and images that'll hopefully motivate this person to accomplish these things. And this relates to our conversation just now. In the middle, they've also included a list and listed a support team who can help them with accomplishing their goals. So I'd like for us to remember that self-care is a continuous, never-ending journey. And it's often hard to start at the beginning, especially if we aren't used to it or haven't done it for quite some time. It takes practice and it does get easier. So remember that it's always okay to shift your priorities and re-examine where you are and make adjustments as you go. The key is that you're always committing to do things that recharge yourself, mind, body, and soul. Self-care is giving the world the best of you instead of what's left of you. All right, so that concludes sort of the self-care aspect. I'm just going to go over some of the services and programs that we have at Alzheimer's Society Toronto. So we have one-on-one counseling, support groups, and care navigators who can help you navigate the healthcare system. We also have education, training, and information. Our education for caregivers happens on Zoom and our website called Alz Educate, where you can register for live sessions or view recordings. We also have the active living programs that provide meaningful opportunities for social inclusion. And we also have the Music Project. So the Alzheimer's Society Music Project reconnects people with the soundtrack of their lives by providing music players downloaded with personalized music to people living with dementia. And this program is available at no cost to people living with dementia. Listening to personalized music can be a powerful activity for those with dementia because music has the potential to increase physical and social activity, reignite older memories, improve sleep, mood, cognition, communication, and overall quality of life. Here is some of the eligibility criteria. So the individual must be diagnosed or suspected with dementia or cognitive impairment, reside in the M postal code, and must agree to use the program materials as directed, return the materials when no longer in use by the original recipient, and provide feedback. The Finding Your Way program aims to raise public awareness of the risk of people going missing. Finding Your Way encourages families to create a safety plan, which includes filling out an identification kit that can be handed to the police if the person goes missing. Finding Your Way also provides tip sheets and information on what to do during and after a missing incident. So why is Finding Your Way important? Right now, more than 200,000 seniors in Ontario are living with dementia, and 6 out of 10 people with dementia will go missing, often without warning. And half of those not found within 24 hours will be gravely injured or die. And in urban areas, 75% of missing individuals are found within 3.2 kilometers of their last seen location. So that's why it's so important to offer assistance when we come across someone who seems lost or confused. So all the information is available through the Finding Your Way website, and currently information is available in the languages seen on the slide. And there are also videos on the website in these languages that show real stories of people with dementia and their families and their dementia journey. I'd also like to let you all know about the Enhancing Care program we offer at Alzheimer's Society Toronto, which includes 2 groups, Teach and Carers, which were developed by the Reitman Center, part of Sinai Health System. So Teach is a 4-week group to support caregivers of people living with dementia to share with and learn from each other around common caregiving topics such as self-care and accessing resources. Carers is an 8-week evidence-based group to help caregivers address communication and behavioral challenges via problem-solving therapy and simulation techniques. So please contact my colleague Katie McLean for more information and referrals to the program. So thank you for attending today's session and for taking time to reflect on the way